Starting off here with The Economist, we see after 100 brutal days, Javier Milei has markets believing. Argentines have not given up on him either. And the thing that I find most interesting about this specifically is that the people of Argentina that voted for Javier Milei, they understood that in the process of what they were dealing with, they were going to be ripping off the Band-Aid. And because of this, there was going to be immediate pain, because you have to actually have that immediate pain so you can properly look at the wound that has been festering beneath the bandage, and only upon this assessment can you properly realize how it is that you have to tackle this issue so you can come out on top, so the infection does not kill the host, which is exactly what this economic calamity would have done to Argentina. As we saw with this action taken by Javier Milei with his austerity measures, as well as dollarization, trying to attach the peso to the US dollar, we saw the peso itself drop in value, which in turn spiked inflation by roughly 13%. Argentina's inflation at the time being roughly 276%, the highest in the world. We can understand that, well, we very well may see utter calamity unfurl if this was to only consistently skyrocket ever higher, but upon analyzing the situation and actually tackling it, we see that Javier Milei and his government have actually been able to come out on top. In fact, lowering inflation with the programs that they've implemented, as well as the extreme austerity measures that they've implemented, now cutting 9 different government agencies, effectively abolishing 50,000 government jobs to the ether, 50,000 people who provided nothing to the Argentine economy, specifically doing nothing more than sucking the teat of the taxpayer, siphoning the value of their wealth, much like a leech on the back of civil society, as we know politicians and government bureaucrats undoubtedly are. Anyways, moving on, with this understanding of what we saw with these extreme economic downturns taking place in Argentina, we can realize that actions were necessary to be taken. And in the process of the actions taken by Javier Milei, like I stated, there were some negative ramifications in the moment with a slight increase of inflation by roughly 13%. But what we can now realize is that the downstream effects of the actions taken by him and his government have been, for the most part, all positive. Here we see from Reason, rents fall and listings increase after Javier Milei ends rent control in Argentina. Milei's repeal of restrictive rent control laws increased housing supply and stabilized prices. Isn't that something? President Javier Milei's sweeping economic reforms have touched many sectors, but few have felt the effects more acutely than Argentina's housing market. His decision to repeal rent controls late last year has reshaped the country's rental market, increasing housing supply and stabilizing rents. The 2020 rental law, enacted under former President Alberto Ferdinand's, aimed to protect tenants. It mandated 3-year lease terms and required rent to be paid in pesos, a currency rapidly losing its value due to rampant inflation. Rent adjustments were limited to once a year based on a central bank rate that factored in inflation and wage growth. The law also allowed tenants to dictate the conditions for lease termination. While the law seemed to offer relief for tenants, it backfired. By late 2023, 1 in 7 homes in Argentina sat empty, yet Buenos Aires residents struggled to find available rentals. Faced with inflation and rigid restrictions, landlords were hesitant to sign long-term leases. Many either set excessively high rents to hedge against future inflation or withdrew their properties from the rental market altogether. Others opted to sell in US dollars or list them on short-term rental platforms like Airbnb, where they could charge in foreign currencies. The crunch of rental properties triggered a full-blown housing crisis. As the supply of rental units dwindled, rental prices skyrocketed, far outpacing inflation. A study by the Institute of Economic Research of the Corboda Stock Exchange found that rents increased by an average of 140% in inflation-adjusted terms between 2020 and 2023. In the last 3 years, the number of properties in the normal rental offer has shrunk to a size that I have never seen in my 25 years in the market, Diego Nocera, an estate agent in central Buenos Aires, told the Financial Times earlier this year. In December of 2023, Milei repealed the law as part of his broader push to deregulate the economy. The move sparked a shift in Buenos Aires housing markets. For many locals, finding a new apartment had become mission impossible, but after the repeal, Buenos Aires saw a doubling of available rental units and rental prices have stabilized, reports Newsweek. The repeal also introduced more flexible agreements between landlords and tenants. Lease durations, if unspecified, now default to 2 years, and landlords can legally accept rent in foreign currencies, offering much-needed protection against inflation. Buenos Aires, a city once gripped by a housing crisis, has seen a flood of available available rental units. By 2024, rental listings increased by 184% with a 62% jump in May alone, according to Zonaprop, Argentina's largest property site. Argentina experience should serve as a cautionary tale for policymakers. Well-intentioned policies aimed at protecting tenants can sometimes backfire, causing more harm than good. And many of the times, I would argue these policies made by these policymakers are people who don't have any bit of understanding about economics whatsoever, and because of that, the things that they are implementing are completely economically illiterate, thus will only lead to downstream effects that are nothing more than negative. Moving on now, here we see from Cronista, the rental law is dead, and the supply of apartments in Caba has already doubled with prices falling. Jumping on, we see from Business Insider, apartment rents are down and supply is up 170% in Buenos Aires since Argentina scrapped all rental regulations. Here we now see from Red State, Argentina's Javier Milei proves the market, not government regulation, provides affordable housing. And that's absolutely true. And another thing that we need to address here would be that government regulation is something that only assists in causing things like inflation as well, because here we can see government regulation and policy that deals with the expansion of government itself only deems the necessity for more money to be printed so that they can fund more government projects, which will only devalue your dollar, as we have seen happen both in Argentina and the United States. Here we see from the Times, Argentinian inflation unexpectedly cools in another Milei victory. Argentina's monthly inflation rose less than expected in November, handing President Javier Milei another victory. And this came out yesterday on December 11th of 2024. Now on to the Buenos Aires Times again. Inflation slowed in Argentina continues to decelerating pace of 2.4% in November. Now onto the Times once again with Milei gaining popularity as Argentina's economy shows a sign of life, and this sign of life is only bringing in investors and eyes from across the world. Here we see from Bloomberg, Argentine stocks rally, bonds climb as investors cheer Milei win. Traders embrace Milei's promises for radical economic reforms with crude oil producers, YPF, and banks leading Argentina's stock rally. And with that understanding of this massive influx of investment pouring into Argentina, we realize what this very well may represent in the future, which could be the prosperity of this nation, leading to the people that are stuck within this inflationary debt spiral that has trapped them for so long, finally escaping and ascending beyond it. And that is something that I truly hope so many different nations across the world will be able to look to as a shining city on the hill as an example of how it is that we have to tackle economic crisis when placed upon us by the bureaucratic bloat that the government thrust upon civil society, as it only ever consistently advocates for its own increase in size and scale, and in doing so only ever desires and needs more funding, which means more money to be printed, which means more inflation and the devalue of the dollar of that nation, thus the destruction of the people's sustainability within that nation. I truly hope that Argentina can be an example for the world to look to, but nonetheless, to go ahead and close this off, I figured we'd go ahead and finish here with this piece from the Mises Institute. 9 months of Javier Milei as president of Argentina, a critical assessment. This is truly quite good. We will not go through the entire thing. We will just go through part of it. If you would like to find it, link in the description down below. You'll be able to find everything that I used for this entire video. Now let's jump into it. In office for just over 9 months, Argentine President Javier Milei continues to face enormous economic and political challenges. His support from Congress and the Senate is fragile, and the president's opponents are trying to mobilize the masses against his policies. This makes success in the economic sphere all the more urgent. The aim here is to find a way out of stagflation, the simultaneous occurrence of stagflation or recession and inflation, in which the Argentine currency finds itself as quickly as possible. The signs are not good. When the Western industrialized nations fell into stagflation in the 1970s, it took almost a decade for price inflation to be defeated to some extent and for economic growth to pick back up again. Milei doesn't have that much time, even though a lot has already been achieved. Since taking office on December 10th of 2023, Javier Milei has achieved the following advances. A surplus since January of 2024, a restriction of money creation by the central bank since April of 2024, and a reduction of the inflation rate since April of 2024, which, with an understanding of how it is that central banks and inflation work, we realize with this mitigation of the central bank's ability to print money is specifically what led to the reduction in inflation in April of 2024. On to the next, we see an abolition of various price regulations and things akin to the housing market, a reduction of various price subsidies, as well as the abolition of 8 ministries, partly with complete closure and dismissal of around 30,000 state employees. And when you actually round this up in totality, it actually equals more so around 45 to 50,000 state employees that have lost their jobs within government. And what does that mean? All of those people were providing quite literally no value and doing nothing more than sucking the lifeblood from the taxpayers within Argentina, who were already economically impoverished because of the actions of the government, which they were only going to continue to take more of, as these cronies within power would have only siphoned more money into their pockets. And now on to the negative side effects, of which there are many, but what we need to realize is the negative side effects as we see happening within Argentina, many of which would have only continued to happen as we see if no actions had been taken by Javier Milei's government after getting into power, because we would have only seen things like the price inflation, which as we see remains at 237% per year, would have gone up because of the consistent money printing from the Central Bank of Argentina, which would have caused nothing more than, again, more economic calamity. Moving down, we see the unemployment has risen to roughly 7.64%, with labor force participation very low, being roughly 48%. And what is that we can draw an understanding of there with 48% participation in the labor force? Well, it means that a large swath of the people within this nation are not actually working, even though they are capable of doing so. And how is it that they are sustaining? Well, they are subsidized by the government dime, and that means that that money that is so consistently printed and causing the inflation within Argentina is being used to subsidize people who do not want to work, and on top of that, pay the salaries of government bureaucrats who are creating nothing, only creating even more of a drain from the Argentine economy. Here we see industrial production is also in a net negative with minus 5.4% annually, external debt rising to around 290 billion, with an insufficient level of foreign exchange reserves at currently $21.7 billion. And on top of that, the devaluation to 975 pesos from 322 to the dollar when he took office. There's truly so much more to say and read here, but I'm going to go ahead and call it there. And if you're interested in finding more information on this topic, link in the description down below. You'll be able to go find every single resource that I used, but not only that, I highly recommend you dive in and go check this out from Focus Economics. This just dropped on the 2nd of December. Here we see Understanding the Transformation of Argentina's Economy under Milei. An overview, Argentina's economic situation under Milei, and it goes into things like GDP growth, inflation, talks about imports and exports, the nature of what's going on with the housing market specifically. It talks about the interest rates, the fiscal balance, the exchange rates, and everything under the sun that you could possibly hope for to understand what very well may be coming down the pike for Argentina in the future. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, and most importantly, my friends, as always, tell someone you love them. Peace out.